Lake of the Woods is one of the most extraordinary and beautiful bodies of water in North America. The lake is studded with thousands of majestic, evergreen plumed islands, most of which are wild and uninhabited. In episode 1 of this documentary series, Sean Kavanagh explored the west side of the Lake of the Woods, starting in Kenora at the lake's north end, and roaming by boat all the way south into the Big Traverse, where prevailing winds across great expanses of water have created strange landforms like the sandy keys of the Sable Islands. In this episode, Sean continues his journey along the south and easterly shores of the lake.
So we're rested, ready, and refueled. We've come up east from the Sable Islands on our second portion of the Lake of the Woods journey. Here's the beautiful Sabaskong Bay. We're going to follow up along the eastern side of the lake and find some great treasures. Let's get going.
Nowadays, a system of buoys, marked channels, and hydrographic charts make navigation of the vast lake much safer for recreational boaters. In the early 1900s, navigation was much more difficult and dangerous, so lighthouses were built in critical areas.
So the lighthouse here, this is not its original location. Originally, it was out on Tomahawk Island, and its purpose was to provide a beacon for log booms going up to the northern and eastern portions of the lake. Navigation at the time was really difficult, especially in the dark. By the 60s, this had become obsolete. There was a mast out on Tomahawk Island, and it was no longer necessary. And the Pentney family hauled it over the ice several kilometers and re-erected it on their property here. And now it's a little museum. So talk about finding a gem of a little tiny museum way down Lake of the Woods. So the lighthouse was built 1900, in operation 1901. The purpose was to provide a beacon for the log booms that were going north and east. This is a living piece of history. Just amazing. Get up to the top here. Wow. It's made of sheet metal, and then wow, look at the view. Absolutely incredible. It's about 30, 40 feet high, well, it's 10 meters. You don't think that that's a lot. You can see for kilometers out onto the lake. And if you could think of a big light in the top of the lighthouse, and the light would be the thing that would help pilots make their way down the lake. Just an extraordinary thing. What a treasure to find out on Lake of the Woods.
Lighthouse keeping was lonely, difficult work, and many of the lighthouse keepers were exceptional individuals. Jonathan Morisseau, for example, was a sturdy Métis voyageur who worked for the Hudson Bay Company on York boats. Morisseau maintained the lighthouses at Bishop's Point and Ferris Island and lived to be 110 years old. Lighthouses like these are a living tribute to the pioneers who developed the know-how to survive and make a living in hostile conditions.
Now we're coming into Morrison down a narrow channel, just getting into a protected bay. It's the first time I've been in this part of the lake.
With a year-round population of about 300, the village of Morrison provides services, accommodation, and boat parking for the many anglers and sailors who enjoy this part of the lake.
So we're just pulling into Hanson Bay now. It's one of the few spots along the Sabaskong. So we're at the government dock in Hanson Bay. This is a good place to come in off the Sabaskong if the water gets a little rough. There's a few lodges in the area and a lot of cottages. It's a place to refuel and rest up if the water gets crazy.
Lake of the Woods has about 14,000 islands and more than 60,000 kilometers of shoreline. The possibilities for exploration are infinite. Every little bay and nook has its own story.
Just took a quick detour off the main route to take us down one of these neat little channels. if you're going fast down the main channel, you wouldn't even see it until you passed it. This one's called Split Rock Bay. We're squeezed down to just a few meters on either side of the boat. And it doesn't look that impressive when you're rolling down on the way to Nestor Falls. We just hooked in here and wow, huge. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but if you look back at the wake, see the color of the water? It's like tea. One of the interesting things about this side of the lake, and we're going to see this as we go further north and east, is that the water color changes over and over and over again. We'll note that when we get up near Turtle Portage. You'll see it.
The most southeasterly point of our journey is the town of Nestor Falls.
So we're coming to the end of the Sabascong Bay, and of course that means Nestor Falls. The beautiful part of the lake, you look around on the shore, you can see the heavy, heavy forest of pine trees, very, very thick in this region. It's called Nestor Falls for a good reason. Well, I know what you're asking. It's the burning question. How did Nestor Falls get its name? Well, sure enough, it was a fellow named Nestor. Many decades ago, there was a heavy forestry industry in the region, and a lot of logging was being done on the other side of the town and the lakes up in that region. But they needed a way to get the logs over the falls, into Lake of the Woods, and down to Kenora to the sawmills. Nestor was brought in to build a series of channels and sluiceways to facilitate that. And of course, if you do a good job, you get a falls named after you. So just down from the falls is a access point for the southeastern portion of Lake of the Woods. It's where a lot of campers, fishermen, hunters in the fall park their cars and get out on the lake. It's also a place to gas up if you're doing a long journey like us.
When leaving Sabascong Bay, there's an intriguing shortcut to Whitefish Bay that saves boaters the long journey around the Alno Peninsula.
So we've arrived at Turtle Portage, or Turtle Portage. On our left is the Alno Peninsula, and it's pretty much the biggest landmass in the center of Lake of the Woods. And under normal circumstances, we wouldn't be able to get through here. But the Ministry of Natural Resources has provided a way to get us over and onto the other side of the lake. Okay, so the boat's cradled. Now the heavy lifting starts. You're asking, why is Sean doing this? Well, the Sabascong Bay on this side and Whitefish Bay on that side. Here's the thing. If you want to navigate around Lake of the Woods and you want to go this way, this is the only alternative except for a 140-kilometer journey around the other side of the Alno Peninsula.
The Alno Peninsula is the largest landmass on Lake of the Woods. So large that it has its own system of lakes, creeks, and ponds. The only reason the Alno is a peninsula rather than an island is because of this tiny bridge of land connecting it to the mainland.
And so the ministry came up with an elegant, maybe not necessarily elegant, but certainly practical solution to getting your boat back and forth. But you got to keep your feet on the brake. It's just about to catch that moment where gravity starts to work. I'll know I'm good when that wheel hits the top of the hill. Oh. And there. Now it's gonna be downhill, so we'll take a break. Wow, that's quite a workout. There are rules on the sign here, and you really have to follow them. Not only for your own safety, but if you mess up and you screw up the workings here, the next boater has got a 140 plus kilometer drive around the Alno Peninsula. Woo! Oh, screaming into the drink. There it goes. So we were in the main channel heading up through Whitefish Bay, but I'm a sucker for these beautiful rocks. And if I catch a good set out of the corner of my eye, I pull over. This is Devil's Bay, and it goes pretty far back, but it's guarded at the entrance by this great set of rocks. Almost looks like a face carved into it.
In geologic terms, the Lake of the Woods is old, but it's not as old as some of its residents. Snapping turtles evolved 40 million years ago, shortly after the age of the dinosaurs. This rugged little animal has survived unbelievable cataclysms, ice ages, and meteor strikes. They are a reminder of our responsibility to respect other creatures and the waters that sustain us. There are several types of pines on the Lake of the Woods, and the most impressive are the red pines and their majestic cousin, the eastern white pine. Virgin pine forests once stretched from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Lake of the Woods, this being the extreme edge of their range. Pine wood was so intrinsic to the Canadian economy that ships sailed the ocean with tall masts made of straight pines. Houses, barns, and even railways were built with pine. As a baby, you were rocked in a pine cradle. You made your babies in a pine marriage bed, and you were buried in a pine coffin.
Well, any good trip, you're going to have something thrown at you, and today it was a little bit of rain. It was so beautiful this morning, and now it's pounding down. But we've got the canopy up. It's not too bad. So we've been on Timber Island here for about an hour, and when we arrived it looked pretty grim, and as we set up the camp and got our fire going, it was raining pretty good and the wind was blowing, and like a shot it's gone. And now we have a Lake of the Woods sunset, Whitefish Bay behind us, and a good meal after a long day of exploring the lake. Just fantastic. Oh, that's good. Good breakfast. Oh, and then you gotta jump in Whitefish Bay. The water here is so clear. It's just beautiful. It's probably the clearest water on Lake of the Woods. It's just a perfect place. place to jump in and have a swim. Woo! Lots of deep water. So an easy place here to bring the boat in and get your gear up onto the shore. That top of that rock where we had our fire last night, it's exposed, so if there's a breeze it keeps the bugs down, although the bugs were crazy last night. And then if you look in here, there's a little cove with a tiny little beach. That's where I parked the boat for the night. No waves, easy to tie up to a tree. You look over here, the beach on Timber Island, just an exquisite beach. See you later, Timber Island. Till next time. Wow, check this out. We're on our way to Sioux Narrows and I passed by this. There's 4 pine trees behind this huge root ball. And the wind came up one day or one night and blew them all over, and there's a bunch. If you go further inland, the wind has pushed them right over. Now, Mother Nature's not the only thing that's been taking trees off Lake of the Woods. There's been an industry here, or there was, for decades. And log booms that stretched across the lake, bringing the product into the sawmill in Kenora.
At one time, Lake of the Woods was heavily logged. Loggers worked all over the lake, collecting the fallen timber into great booms that were towed north to Kenora, where the wood was sawn into lumber and beams for shipment across Canada. It's shocking to modern sensibilities to see how barren the landscape was in those days, when trees were mainly valued for their price on the market. The logging industry is still active today, but it is carefully managed. Our pines may not be as massive as they once were, but the good news is our forests are mostly recovered. One of the main attractions along the east shore of the lake is the town of Sioux Narrows.
Thought to be the longest single-span wooden bridge in the world, or at least folks that built it would like to think so. It's supposed to last 40 years. And it's lasted a lot longer than that.
With its quaint gift shops, restaurants, fishing lodges, and historic bridge, Sioux Narrows seems to be a town right out of a movie or novel.
So we've come under the bridge and now we're in Sioux Narrows proper. Maybe stop in at the Sport Fishing Center for a second, have a look around.
People who visit Sioux Narrows for the first time often have the same instant reaction. You know what? I'd like to live here. A mandatory stop in Sioux Narrows is the Northern Ontario Sports Fishing Centre. On the outside, it's an architectural showpiece. On the inside, it's sort of a living museum with fascinating exhibits that document the history of the area.
Check out the slick model, hey? This must have taken some time to put together. Actually, what you see out on the lake is not a wood span bridge anymore. Around 2007, the timber started to rot and they had to do some repairs. What you see out there now is a steel bridge clad in wood, but it still looks impressive, and so does this model.
Sports fishing is intertwined with the history of Sioux Narrows. Every year, hundreds of anglers compete in various local fishing derbies, one of them being the Sioux Narrows Bassin for Bucks tournament. The anglers go after big cash prizes, and at the end of the day, their opponents end up back in the lake. This is one of the best fishing areas on Lake of the Woods, and you don't have to travel very far to find excellent fishing for the ever-popular and tasty walleye, the scrappy and hard-fighting northern pike, the rare and beautiful lake trout, and, of course, the largest underwater predator on Lake of the Woods, the legendary muskie.
Hot to trot. Hot to trot. Oh, swing and a miss. There we go. Got him.
I'm not sure which one to go through, so I'll just pick one. Slick in here, though.
You can't explore the thousands of islands, channels, and points on the Lake of the Woods without wondering, where did all these names come from? In some cases, like Long Bay, the answer is obvious.
So we're just at the end of Long Bay, and this is sort of the end of the Whitefish Bay area of the lake. Remember, I mentioned how absolutely beautiful the water is. Just a little bit, we'll start to transition into another color of water, but I almost want to just pull over and jump off the back of the boat into the lake for a second. It's so clean here.
Some of the places along our journey trace their names back to long ago stories and legends.
Yellow Girl Point, right here. A couple of stories about Yellow Girl. I'll tell one of them, a little more romantic side. Group of Ojibwe paddlers coming through the bay. They see a young woman or a girl on the edge of the point, long blonde hair. They paddle up to get a closer look, and she jumps into the water and disappears. They never see her again. Yellow Girl Point.
A story almost as hard to believe is that some of these beautiful bays and islands were once occupied by prison camps.
There were 6 prisoner of war camps on Lake of the Woods. This is the location of one of them. It's hot. Well, here it is, the site of Camp 52, one of the 6 prisoner of war camps on Lake of the Woods. Up to 120 men per camp. They got 50 cents a day to cut up to a cord of wood, and of course they got rations.
It was no picnic being a prisoner of war, but in later reminiscences, many of the prisoners said they preferred it to being in combat overseas. Some wrote about their experiences afterwards, saying they were young and strong and loved the outdoor life. They were paid 50 cents a day to work at horse logging in the woods, hauling timber to the lake, where it was gathered in booms on the ice, ready for later hauling.
There's not much here to find, but there are a few pieces of the past lurking in the woods. These look to be blades that you would put on the front of a truck to push the snow away. Difficult to tell whether this was here in the 1940s or ended up getting dumped subsequent era.
A veteran of Rommel's North Africa campaign said, "The guards even gave us guns and allowed us to go hunting as long as we stayed within 5 miles of the camp." Some enjoyed the Canadian backwoods so much they decided to live in Canada after the war. Most of those veterans have passed away, but one described his prisoner of war experience on the Lake of the Woods as the happiest days of my life.
I think about this as the very definition of a long way from home. Think about it. You're in combat in Europe, you're captured, you're put on a ship, you're taken to Canada, trained across the country, and you end up here. How far away from home is that? Here we go, here we go.
Continuing up the northeast side of the lake, one has to navigate a labyrinth of narrow channels and bays. Bay is particularly spectacular, and it's a favorite anchorage of sailors and power boaters.
Eagle Pass, Hay Island to our port side, mainland, starboard. Nice, catch in here. There we go. Safe and silver motor.
Coming out of Eagle Pass, Sean encounters a sailing regatta that is a reminder that he's entering a more populated section of the lake.
We're just coming up to Sultana Island, right here on the starboard side. And I'm looking at that cliff and saying, I'm coming back to jump off you. Now, Sultana really was the premier gold works on Lake of the Woods. It was a huge operation, more than 80 men working the mine. They had a crusher, they had bunkhouses, cookhouses, more than timber, more than fish, more than any other commodity you can think of. The word gold strikes an irrational exuberance in the hearts of men. And Sultana Island here was ground zero on Lake of the Woods for that exuberance. Wow, there you go. Look, you can, even the old cable that ran down, still in pretty good shape. Things like stone foundations here, they resist the bush taking over. Here's an old cooktop, used to make meals for the crews. So human beings are curious by nature. How far, how high, or how deep? Let's see if I can get a rock between the two walls of the shaft and see how far it'll go. Ooh, that's pretty far down. Never fails. You come in here, there's always a big wow factor. There are not many places like this around on Lake of the Woods. And actually, since I was last here, a lot of this earth has fallen away because there's another shaft on the other side of this hole. It's clearly eroding in here, and you can see, look at the size of the timbers that they used to prop up operations. Just to give you an idea, it's filled with water.
During a relatively short period of time in the early 1900s, there were many mines on the Lake of the Woods, employing hundreds of immigrants and forming the backbone of the local economy. Sultana was the biggest gold mine on Lake of the Woods. It was originally staked in 1888 and developed by a Winnipeg businessman who spent a fortune erecting a stamp mill on the site. Steam-powered hammers pounded the quartz ore into fine gravel from which the gold was extracted. The mine shafts were crude and poorly lit caverns that descended 800 feet into the ground. In one tragic accident in 1901, a dynamite blast killed 4 men. 2 of them were pulled out of the mine. The other 2 were never found.
There were reports of a couple of miners dying in a shaft somewhere around the peak of the operation of the mine. And some people say that they've come here, and if they are very quiet, they can hear voices in the shaft. But I don't believe any of that stuff.
Of course, these are just fireside ghost stories, but still, a heavy and forbidding mood seems to inhabit the abandoned mine. And it's a relief to walk away and come out into sunlight.
Wow. And then you get a view of the whole bay. And it's nothing but slag, the refuse of the mining practice from back in the day.
In 1888, a dam was built at the north end of the lake, raising the water level approximately 1 meter. At the time, Sultana was a peninsula of First Nations Treaty 3 property, and the rising water level turned Sultana into an island. The island was logged and mined without negotiation or compensation, and the controversy continues to this day.
One of the great spots to picnic or to spend a night camping is Scotty's Beach. So we're going to pull in and have a quick look. There's lots of great beaches on Lake of the Woods, but this one being so close to Kenora is definitely a hot spot for a lot of people. Shut off your motor. There we go. And let's give it a little bit of a pull. Scotty's Island, Scotty's Beach, was named after a hermit-type fella by the name of Scotty Patterson. He lived on the island and he grew vegetables. Every couple of weeks he'd load up his canoe and he'd paddle into Kenora to sell his wares. He also did a little bit of prospecting on the island. Today it's a hot spot. Houseboats, boaters, canoeists, they come and they spend the night or just the day, do a little bit of water skiing in the bay. This is one of the nicest beaches in this part of Lake of the Woods. Here we go. It's always a little bit easier getting it on than getting it off, I guess. There we go.
Returning to the north end of the lake with its recreational boaters, cottages, and thronging vacationers is a bit of a shock, like stepping out of a time machine back into the present. Devil's Gap can be busy in the summer, and boaters have to approach the Narrows with caution. Exiting from the Gap, you feel like you've made it back to the modern era. People, our fellow species, and lots of them, especially on a summer-long weekend when music, dancing, and festivity are, for many, more compelling than the call of the wild. On a warm summer weekend, people come together to celebrate. And what are they celebrating? Life on the lake.
You thought that was the end of the film? Not so fast. One more bucket list item on Lake of the Woods. A trip on the Grace Anne II.
Built in the early 1930s by the famed Ditchburn brothers of southern Ontario, the Grace Anne II was their last boat, and it was their masterpiece.
Wow, dinner set up for 8. Hi, Miss Watson.
Hello.
So, you've got to get a lot of questions. There'll be a lot of curious people that get on board.
I hear that it feels like you're in a different era when you're aboard.
It does. You feel like you should be in a, tails or,
Yes.
dinner jacket. I should be in a dinner jacket, not this grubby thing. And you almost have that flapper era kind of feel to it.
Yes.
A lot of people around Lake of the Woods who have been here for a long time, they see it and they have an understanding of it. It's the lady of the lake, so to say.
Get down and see the staterooms and the galley down below. And wow, you check this out, the cabin in the bow of the boat, right underneath the wheelhouse. Probably the quietest room. Just beautiful. Look at the Hudson Bay blankets. Nice touch. Then you move through the center of the boat. Little bar. If it's inclement weather, you can have a nice scotch and soda. Part of the kitchen facilities. Here's the galley. Pretty tight. French chef has been working here for 19 years preparing meals for people on board. And then staterooms on either side. Oh, thank you very much. That's lovely. Wow. Tough duty here on the Grace Anne too, eh? Oh, that's delicious. I actually feel like I should be in a dinner jacket. It's such from a different era, this beautiful boat.
Beautiful lake, beautiful boat. And on a day like this, there's no better place to be.
When I was in my 20s, I lived in Whistler, British Columbia. I was a ski nut and I liked to mountain bike. But at the end of the ski season, I started to pack up and my friends there said, "Where are you going? Whistler's beautiful in the summer." I had one response for them: Lake of the Woods. Wherever I've been in the world, I've always thought of this place and always found my way back to it. And this trip around the lake has been marvelous. Think of standing on Massacre Island and looking out over the Traverse, or walking on the beach at Sable Island. I think of seeing that lighthouse down by Morrison. I'd never seen that before. And then ending it up here on the Lady of the Lake, the Grace Anne II. Spectacular trip. Lake of the Woods is special to me, and I know it's special to thousands and thousands of people that visit here and spend their time here winter and summer.
A long trip through the wilds of the Lake of the Woods is like a journey through the past, replete with Ojibwe legends, old light stations, and haunted gold mines.